ओम नमः श्री यतिराजाय विवेकानंद सूरये सच्चित सुख स्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे. We will briefly recapitulate the two sutras, sutra number 42 and 43, which describe what Savitarka and Nirvitarka Samadhi is. So let us see what that sutra says. तत्र शब्दार्थ ज्ञान विकल्पैः संकीर्णाः सवितर्का समापत्ति. Means whenever the as a result of concentration the sound here means the vibration. Every object has a name and it has a form. So the name, when you pronounce it, whether you pronounce it through the mouth or mentally, it results in some kind of vibration. So everything that you think results in vibration. Though there is no sound, I mean, there is no gross sound, there is a sort of subtle sound made in your mind whenever you think of objects. So the nerve currents which conduct it and knowledge is the reaction. So you see a cow, for example, all the meditations that Patanjali has described till now, he calls this meditation where the sound, that is the name, the meaning and the resulting knowledge are all mixed up. You cannot separate them. It is known as Savitarka, meditation with question. Vitarka means with question. Savitarka means meditation with question. Later on, he will give us higher and higher dhyanas. Nirvitarka, Savichara, Nirvichara. We will come to those other three now. So I'm just recapitulating what we discussed so that that link is, that connection is there. So now we see that when we talk of Savitarka Samadhi, there is first an external vibration, the word. It is uttered either through the mouth or mentally. This is carried inward by the sense currents, and then you get a meaning of that. So you know, when you say cow, it means certain, it's a certain animal with certain characteristics of which you have previous knowledge. So you get the meaning. After that, how you react to that cow? What do you do? The meaning is clear in your mind, but you have not yet reacted. So the reactionary wave which comes in the mind, which is a result of your old samskaras, which is also known as chitta, it is a knowledge of that object which produces a reaction in the chitta. As Swamiji says, it is very important to understand these three things, three parts of the same process. It looks like a continuous process, but there are different things. Every thought that we think, if we observe carefully, there are certain sounds associated with every thought. Along with the thought comes the meaning of that thought. The nerve currents convey it to the sound center in the brain. Then the brain tries to understand the meaning in its own way. And then it gives back a reaction. Suppose you see a sweet, the reaction comes later, but it all happens so fast that we just take that sweet and gobble it up or eat it. We don't, if the mind is on a reactive mode, we do not even hesitate. But a thinking mind, a mind with discrimination, will try to find out whether the sweet has to be eaten. Is it the right time to eat? So all these things, they are a result of the higher functions of the mind, but the lower functions of the mind is absolutely reactive, as in the case of animals. So the animal thinks of a particular thing, it thinks of a prey. For example, a lion will think of a prey, and the moment it thinks of a prey and sees it, It tries to eat, it tries to hunt it down and eat that prey. So that is because the reactive mind gives instructions to the senses, the legs, it starts running and it tries to kill that prey and eat it. So that means all the three things have been mixed up. The sound, the thought wave, which is in the mind, in a subtle way, the meaning of that sound, what it means, and the resulting knowledge. The resulting knowledge, if all the resulting knowledge in the sense the reaction to given by the mind to that thought, that is resulting knowledge. If it is all mixed up, it is samadhi with question. The next samadhi is higher. So here the samadhi is known as nirvitarka samadhi. Smriti parishuddho swarupa shunya evartha matra nirbhasa. The samadhi without question or nirvitarka, which we discussed last time. When the memory is purified or devoid of any qualities, you don't react. That is why in the second chapter, the Sthita Prajna Lakshana, he says, try not to be disturbed by the pair of opposites which we face, heat and cold, though they will cause some reactions, but try not to succumb to the reactive mind. In the practice of, it is by the practice of meditation, continuous meditation, that we come, that these three, the name which you utter in the mind or loudly, the object and the meaning represented by that sound, and the knowledge of that, the characteristics which comes as a reaction. Now, if you continue your meditation, take it to a higher level, then these three will be there, but we'll come to a state where these three do not mix. You can perceive them as separate. We can act to get rid of them. How to do it? We'll first try to understand what these three are. The three things that happen when a name is uttered, or maybe when you react to certain things. The word is uttered, a meaning is conveyed by that word, and then you react to it. So what are these three things? Again, we have to try to find out, and try to find out how these things happen in our mind. It all happens instantaneously. There's hardly any gap between the three. That's why they all get mixed up. And the intense concentration that we have is also known as Savitarka Samadhi. But in Nirvitarka, to understand that, you have to first understand here is our mind stuff, the chitta. So Swamiji tells us to imagine that the mind stuff or chitta is like a big lake. And the vibration, the word, the sound, the word uttered or unuttered, it may be in the mind, maybe a subtle sound. It is like a pulsation coming over that placid, calm lake. Our lake in its natural state, in its highest state, is supposed to be very calm. But every time we are bombarded by these names, names come. We think, every time we think, a name is uttered, loudly or otherwise. And in that calm lake, I pronounce a word, say cow. As soon as it enters through my ears, a wave is produced in the chitta. The cow produces a wave in the chitta. Everybody's chitta or the mind stuff, which is made of previous knowledge, the samskaras of previous knowledge. So the word cow will strike the chitta of different people and different reactions will appear in that. Somebody who loves a cow will perhaps think of feeding that cow. Others who eat the cow, like beef, they might think of even killing and having a meal. So as soon as the reactions will change from person to person depending on his old samskaras and the chitta. So as soon as the word cow enters our ears, or even if we think of it, a wave is produced in the chitta along with it. So that wave, the shape of that wave represents the idea of the cow. The form or the meaning, as we call it, that will be more or less uniform with all the people, unless he has never seen a cow. As I told you, a person was criticizing the other one, making fun of him by saying he is like a hippopotamus. So hippopotamus is a huge animal. I mentioned this example that shows that the same word may mean different things to different people. That person did not react at all. He perhaps thought that the other person is praising him. But only when he went and consulted the dictionary and saw the meaning and the picture of the hippopotamus, then he understand he is referring to my weight, my bulk, and is calling me a fat person by comparing me to that hippopotamus. So then he got angry. But till then, since he did not know the meaning of the word hippopotamus, there was no reaction. So the wave represents the idea of the cow, the wave which is formed, but the wave forms differently in different people. When the word cow is uttered, it creates different impressions depending on your samskaras, depending on your background, depending on your chitta. The apparent cow that you know is really the wave in the mind stuff that comes as a reaction to the internal and external sound. Now, what you do with that word is very important. The reaction is very important. So we have to withhold that reaction, and according to Raj Yoga or according to the Gita also, it is not the utterance of the sound or thinking of the objects that cause problems. The Vishaya or the objects. There is a beautiful verse in the Bhagavad Gita which says the Vishaya by itself is harmless if you are neutral, but it is your reaction to that Vishaya and the attachment to that Vishaya that causes problems. So with the sound, the wave, when it dies away, it cannot exist without a word. This wave cannot be created without a word. You may try very hard. If there is no word, there is no wave. The mind is always placid. So you may ask how it is when we only think of the cow, we don't hear a sound. How can it produce a vibration? But the answer is that we make that sound ourselves. Where we don't observe or we don't recognize that the cow is being uttered faintly in our mind. And with that comes the wave. Whether it is faint sound or a big sound, the wave is definitely created in the chitta. There cannot be any wave without this impulse of the sound, gross or subtle. When it is not from outside, it is from inside. And when the sound dies, when the word cow, if you keep on repeating, for example, when we do japa, we keep on repeating. What is the reason? We want to keep that wave alive. When we say Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, the word Shiva creates certain waves, and we don't want that wave to die, because that wave helps us to kill or to destroy all the other little waves which are troubling us. A big wave comes and gobbles up all the smaller waves. That's the idea behind japa, because that's why they say constantly repeat the name. If you repeat, what is the function of japa? That the moment you stop the japa, the wave dies. What remains? The result of the reaction, and that is knowledge. The knowledge only remains. But these three things are so closely combined in our mind that we cannot separate them. When the sound comes, the senses vibrate, the wave reaction, the wave rises in reaction. They follow so closely that there is no distinction between each other. We think it's all in one process. Whereas if you meditate, what is the function of meditation is that if you practice for a long time, memory, which is the receptacle of all impressions in the chitta, the samskaras are nothing but solidified memories, or you may say petrified memories. When you say, you see, observe fossil in nature, some animal used to live once upon a time. That animal has died, it has become extinct. But somehow a fossil has been created because of the impression that dead animal created on the mud, then it became a stone, and somehow for millions of years that fossil has been saved. So also our impressions, maybe of previous lives, they are all there, good and bad. If there are good impressions, they create a good reaction. If there are bad impressions, they create a bad reaction. So till it is purified, when you say purified, this destruction of impressions, all these samskaras, then we are, when you really destroy it, then we are able to clearly distinguish one from the other. This is known as nirvitarka samadhi. So in this samadhi, there is, the sound is there, the wave also is there, but because the reaction of the chitta is withheld, the reaction doesn't take place, the person becomes a sthita prajna. He attains a state where he attains this nirvitarka samadhi. These are the two verses that we discussed previously. Now, the 44th verse says, Et yaiva savichara nirvichara cha sukshma vishaya vyakhyata. By this process, if you continue it further, the concentrations with the discrimination. Now that is the buddhi, where buddhi is being used. So this is a faculty which is unique to human beings. Animals don't have that to a large extent. They have a very rudimentary discrimination. They can also think what is good or what is bad, but it is at a very, very primitive level. Whereas in a human being, the concentration with discrimination, savichara, and without discrimination, nirvichara, whose objects are finer, are also explained. The previous two, savitarka and nirvitarka, concerned objects, gross objects. But here, when we deal with subtle objects, Patanjali has divided them not as savitarka and nirvitarka, but as savichara and nirvichara. The process is exactly similar, but the objects taken up in the previous meditations, the savitarka samadhi and the nirvitarka samadhi, both are gross, whereas here the objects themselves are fine. Like in a dream object, an imaginary object, which is there, but they are subtle, or certain qualities. For example, compassion, when we meditate on the compassion of Buddha. Now, what do you mean? We know we can meditate on Buddha, but meditating on the compassion of Buddha is a subtle kind of meditation. So it has to have some kind of vichara. So the same process, if we apply savitarka, which we applied to savitarka and nirvitarka, as regards the gross objects, here also the word compassion is uttered. It means certain things to certain people. If a person has heard that word compassion, but he has not meditated upon it, then he has very little use. He will just utter it like a parrot utters. The parrot also says compassion, compassion, but what does it understand? Karuna or kripa, grace. People go on using these words, these subtle words. They say, oh, the Lord's kripa is there. What they mean is the Lord will give me some toffees. But that is not kripa. Kripa means something else, the grace of the Lord. So the more deeper we go, the more we discriminate. And the sukshma vishayas, they give us different understandings. And the meditations on that, with all the three mixing up, the sound of the subtle object, the meaning of the subtle object, as we have been explained, depending on our understanding, and the reaction to it, how we react to it. If a very, very evil person, if you talk to him of compassion and talk to him of the glorious life of Buddha, who was willing to give up his life even for a goat, he will just laugh. He'll say, what a fool he is, because he doesn't understand, or nor does he want to understand compassion. He says, if I see a goat, I'll just kill that goat and eat it. That is more logical for me rather than trying to save the life and giving up my life for that goat. So compassion can mean different things to different people, especially when the savichara samadhi is there. You have a tendency to follow. If it gets mixed up, you have a different result. If you can separate them, if you can discriminate enough, then you go to the real essence, the real meaning of the word samadhi. So nirvichara, now samadhi means it is a higher form of concentration. You have to remember, don't compare it with the nirvikalpa samadhi. That is a very high samadhi. Here we are talking, whenever Patanjali refers to the word samadhi, savitarka, it is just an intense thought. You have to remember this, an intense thought. When pratyahara becomes dharana, it is just a qualitative, the dharana becomes dhyana, it is a qualitative difference. Dharana multiplied 12 times becomes samadhi. So it is an intense meditation which is referred to here as samadhi. So it is not something mysterious or anything. It is just a intense concentration. Savitarka, nirvitarka, the two types of intense concentration on gross objects. Savichara and nirvichara, the intense concentration on the subtle objects. So now we come to the 45th sutra. Now the gross and the subtle we understood. What is savitarka, nirvitarka and all those things. In a way we understood that in a simple way. Now when we deal with objects of concentration belonging to both subtle or the gross, subtle between lower, higher and lower samadhi, where the subtle savichara is samadhi upon a subtle object, which is mixed with the awareness of the name, the quality and the knowledge of that word, like compassion or faith and all those things. They are not objects, gross objects. They are certain qualities. They have a name, no doubt, but they mean certain subtle things. Nirvichara is a super reflective. You can say savichara is a reflective type of meditation, whereas nirvichara is super reflective, where the subtle object is unmixed with that kind of awareness of name, quality and knowledge. Now to understand this, the 45th sutra is very important. Sukshma Vishayatvat. The 45th verse I'll just read. Sukshma Vishayatvat cha Linga Paryavasanam. Paryavasanam. What does it mean? Behind all Sukshma Vishayatva. Tvacha. Sukshma Vishayatva means behind all this subtle. Sukshma means subtle. Behind the subtle objects, what is there? What is the one which sustains or supports these subtle objects? There should be something behind the subtle objects. Behind the gross, there may be subtle. Behind the subtle is the Prakriti, the primal cause, the original cause which gives rise through its three gunas. It gives rise to the varied universe that we see, the gross universe that we see, the subtle universe that we don't see but we perceive, the subtle perceptions, they are also part of that Prakriti, behind all the subtle objects. So behind the gross, we know there are subtle forces. Behind the Annamaya Kosha is the Pranamaya Kosha, the subtle forces that run the Annamaya Kosha in the human being. So also in the trees and all, there is some subtle forces which run the gross. We understand up to that point. But what is behind the subtle? Who controls the subtle? So here the 45th sutra says, Patanjali is giving a wonderful picture of the universe. Prakriti, the word Prakriti means that from which every undifferentiated stuff of matter. It is undifferentiated. Only when it becomes differentiated, the combination of three gunas gives rise to gross matter, whether it is hard, soft, volatile, shining. So many qualities are there. Then the undifferentiated stuff of matter is what Prakriti is constituted of that. Then the energy by which all the phenomena we see around us, the projection, the phenomena using this gross object, so many things are happening. Creation is happening. Plants are giving birth to different plants, this pollination. There are so many things in the plant world, in the insect world, in the animal world, in the human world. that we see, the various phenomena, the play of the different forces, the energies, which are subtle. So these phenomena happen only because Prakriti is behind them. It is the motive power of the universe. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Jini Brahma, Tini Ma, Tini Shakti. Jini Shiv, Tini Shakti. Means that which is the supreme consciousness projects itself. We never use the word create. Creation is something which cannot come out of nothing. You can't create something out of nothing. So that is why we call whatever we see in the gross or in the subtle universe as a projection of it's a projection. So when we meditate, when the mind turns inward, it probes, it starts from the gross object. Then it penetrates the gross coverings. Then it goes to the subtle. Like from Savitarka and Nirvitarka, we go to Savichara and Nirvichara when we meditate on the subtle objects. We go to the subtle essence, and then beyond the subtle essence, we come to this Avyakta Prakriti itself. But according to Patanjali and according to Vedanta also, Prakriti is not the ultimate reality. Behind Prakriti is Brahman, because Sankhya believes in Purusha and Prakriti, the dual nature. Whereas Vedanta, especially Advaita Vedanta, they don't give separate importance or maybe recognition to this Prakriti. They just say that it is just an illusion or Maya. But whatever it is, behind this Prakriti, we have to penetrate the causal aspect of Prakriti. We have penetrated the gross through Savitarka and Nirvitarka Samadhi, deep concentration. Try to find out, try to separate the awareness, the name, the awareness, and the thinking and the reaction to that awareness. When we have separated that, we got the Nirvitarka Samadhi. Then we went to Savichara Samadhi. In this, when we dealt with, similarly, we dealt with the subtle objects. We have these two types of Savichara and Nirvichara. But beyond that, they say, behind all the subtle objects also, when we raise our concentration, we touch this Prakriti, the primal cause, the cause and effect, which you can say is the Karana Sharira. So behind Prakriti is Brahman. Behind that, even that is Brahman, which is pure consciousness. So the four kinds of Samadhi which we have discussed now, Savitarka, Nirvitarka, Savichara, Nirvichara, they all come within the realm of phenomena, and they are just preparations. They are just preparations for the highest, to attain to the highest state of direct union with Brahman, which is the highest Samadhi. In this connection, it is nice to recollect a parable of Sri Ramakrishna. So the disciple once came to a teacher to learn to meditate on God. The teacher gave him instructions, but the disciple soon returned and said that he could not carry them out. Every time he meditated, he found himself thinking about his pet buffalo. He was very much attached to that. Then the teacher told him, well, then you meditate on that buffalo itself. You are so fond of. The disciple shut himself up in a room and began to concentrate on that buffalo. After some days, the teacher knocked at his door, and the disciple answered, Sir, I'm sorry, I can't come out to greet you. This door is too small. My horns will be in the way. Then the teacher smiled and said, oh, very good. You have become identified with the object of your concentration. Now, using that ability, but if he stopped there, he would imagine himself to be a buffalo. He will not go any further. But still, he has achieved some concentration. Now he says, now it is the right time to fix that concentration upon God, and you will succeed. Last time we discussed this, partly discussed this sutra, and gave the examples of how Tulsidasa's love for his wife, when that intense concentration, that intense worldliness, when it was shifted to God, the same love, the same attachment, the same intense concentration When you say attachment, it means concentration. Savitarka, nirvitarka, savichara, nirvichara. These are all different types of concentrations which we have developed on any object. Patanjali doesn't make any distinction. As Sri Ramakrishna gave this example, you can even meditate on a buffalo, but you should not stop there. Because unless you meditate on Brahman, which is Satchidananda, as it has been described in Vedanta, then you will not become one with it. You will become one with whatever you meditate upon. So in this case, the disciple had concentration, and his guru said, okay, if you can't meditate, at least meditate on that buffalo which you like so much. And then he became so identified that he imagined that himself has become a buffalo, and he could not come out. The door was, when the guru was knocking on the door, he said, I can't come out. The door is too small, because he has imagined that he has grown like the buffalo on which he was meditating. But the guru was not unhappy. He was happy because he says, at least now you have this concentration. Now you use that faculty of the mind which you have developed by meditating on the buffalo and change the object and meditate on God, and then you will succeed. So Patanjali, that's why says start with any object. But depending on the object on which you meditate, the result will be seen. Now that is explained in the 46th verse. We'll come to that verse now. These kinds of ta eva sabija samadhi, these kinds of samadhi, that is meditating on gross objects or subtle objects, they are known as sabija, means that the meditation with seeds. The seeds, what are these seeds? Seed means they are samskaras. They are in the chitta. So the chitta has a lot of seeds. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the grandmother of the house, after the vegetable garden or whatever she has grown, after those things are removed, the seeds, she preserves the seeds in a pot so that she can use it in the next season to grow things. So these seeds, they don't die. The seeds, sabija, I mean the bija, which is lying in the mind, the seeds of our past thoughts, they are likely to sprout whenever it gets an opportunity. Whenever it comes in contact with external or internal sound, the meaning of it, whether it is gross or subtle, the seeds have a tendency to create further seeds, and that is how we go from one life to another. The seeds don't allow us, so that attachment has to be removed. So that sabija samadhi, however nice it may be, it will make you come back into this gross world and the subtle world. If not the gross, you might go to heaven and enjoy the subtle world. So even though perfect concentration has been achieved, the seeds of desire and attachment are still there. Sabija. Sabija means the samadhi has been attained, but the seeds have not been destroyed. And the seeds are dangerous. So if you don't concentrate without with non-attachment or without vairagya, abhyasa can be dangerous. That is why right from the beginning, Patanjali says abhyasa and vairagya. So no meditation should be practiced without non-attachment, because as I said, intense meditation will give rise to intense concentration. It gives power which you can't handle. For example, certain people, they were intensely concentrated or attached to a certain idea, and they became very, very evil personalities. Like for example, Hitler, some idea he had got, and he just wanted to take it to its logical conclusion. The concentration he had and the firm faith he had in his own ideology caused so much of destruction. So with attachment, especially if it is a gross object or even a subtle object, those are the seeds are still remaining. It is sabija samadhi, so it can be dangerous. However, that concentration, the people, that is why Swamiji used to say, he once told Nivedita, I believe, that people who become great monks would have been kings in the previous birth. Because to become a king, you should have tremendous amount of concentration. But unfortunately, it is directed towards power, towards property, towards killing other people. So most of these kings, or this in the olden days, of course, nowadays we don't have kings, but even in the olden days, only the very superior type of person who could rule, who could control, who could conquer became a great emperor. So these emperors, when they find that the seeds of desire which they had, like Ashoka, for example, how did renunciation come to him? By the touch of Buddhism. So he was an emperor. He went on conquering one kingdom after the other. He went on killing mercilessly. Was a very violent type of king. And after the Kalinga war, suddenly that concentration was focused upon non-violence, and then suddenly became a very compassionate and kind person, and he took to Buddhism. So only those people, Patanjali says, these earlier samadhis, though they may be dangerous if they are used in a negative sense, but that concentration will lead us to non-attachment. If that happens, then you are saved. Then we come to the next verse. The liberation is very near, but only thing is you have to undergo certain experiences because of this bija which is there. The aspirant has already risen to such heights that after these four types of samadhi, it is unlikely that he will fall back into bondage. He may make mistakes, but he will somehow understand that the concentration that I have attained has brought me to such a state. Now I have to just take the last jump and reach Nirvichara Samadhi. Now we will discuss what that state is in verse 47. So verse 47, yes. Now verse 47, we come to verse 47. Before that, I would just like to tell you something about Prakriti, because the last step which we want to attain to become one with Brahman, we cannot do without the help of Prakriti. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, without the grace of Shakti, you cannot realize Brahman. Now, what is the meaning of that? Why does Sri Ramakrishna say that? Why is Shakti so important in our life? Now we are practicing, we are celebrating Navratri. It is known as Shakti Parva. The entire world, wherever it is celebrated, in whichever form, Durga Puja, Navratri, in different cultures, this mother worship is there. Why do we worship Shakti? According to Raj Yoga, though it is known as, this Prakriti is known as Pradhana. Pradhana means the chief, the Prakriti. Now it is unmanifest. As Brahman, it is unmanifest. It is one with the Brahman, the consciousness aspect of reality, and the unprojected, or maybe that avyakta aspect of Prakriti are one. Shiva, Shakti, Abhed. When it starts creating, when it starts projecting, creating would be a wrong word. When it starts projecting outside, Prakriti uses all the different elements. The gross objects that we see in nature are just elements, and these five gross elements, Agni, there are five basic elements, which fire, water, air, earth, and these five elements are there. So when we take these five elements, Prithvi, Up, Tej, Vayu, and Prithvi means the earth, that is solid. Then Tej means the plasma state. Liquid is Up means water. Then Akasha is the fifth one. Akasha means the subtle ether. We cannot see that ether, but it is the subtle material out of which all the other gross things come out. So the fine matters, the objects begin with the tanmatras. Tanmatras are the finer particles behind this gross matter. The organs also, the mind stuff. So we know there are 24 evolutes of Prakriti. So they are the mind stuff, the mind or the aggregate of all the five senses, five Gyanendriyas, the five Karmendriyas. We have discussed this, all those things. The ego, the mind stuff or Chitta, and the equilibrium state of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. So with all these things, Prakriti, the 24 categories, as Sri Ramakrishna described them, the 24 categories. In the Gospel also he says. So with the three gunas and all the 24 categories, Prakriti creates the fine objects. The only exception is Purusha. Purusha is totally separate. It cannot, it is an uncreated, it is the self existing consciousness. But everything else which is projected outside is a result of Prakriti. So, now we come to this 45th Sutra, where 46th Sutra, where he says, the sta eva sabija samadhi. So we all know all these things are with seeds. Now 47th Sutra says, nirvichara vaisharadhyed adhyatma prasadha, in reaching nirvichara samadhi. Now sabija samadhi is one thing, but nirvichara samadhi, in reaching nirvichara samadhi, the mind becomes pure, but still it is not one with Brahman. The 47th verse just says that nirvichara samadhi, in that samadhi, because you are separating the subtle objects, the name, the objects, and the reaction, all the three are separate, and you have become totally detached. That is what purity of mind means. Purity of mind means not being associated with any object, gross or subtle. So when you concentrate, when we go on and savitarka, nirvitarka, sabija, savitarka, nirvitarka, savichara, nirvichara, when we reach the nirvichara, where you are separating, you are not even allowing the subtle objects to be mixed, the knowledge and all those things to be mixed. And then you reach a state where the mind becomes absolutely pure. So purity of mind means reaching the state of nirvichara samadhi. In what happens in that samadhi? That is verse 48, and we will conclude, then we'll take up some questions. Ritambhara tatra prajna. Ritambhara means filled with truth. Ritam means truth, the cosmic truth. Now that knowledge which is absolutely true, all our knowledge is incomplete and hence untrue. Not untrue in the sense it is a lower truth. As Swamiji says, we go from lower truth to higher truth. So all the knowledge we have till we reach the Ritambhara Prajna. Prajna means the consciousness. So it is known as Ritambhara. Bhara means filled with. Ritam means truth. Ritambhara Prajna Tatra Prajna. In that samadhi, knowledge is said to be filled with truth. So this verse is very important because the concept of truth is that of nirvichara samadhi, that concentration where you are totally detached, all the seeds which give rise to subtle or gross universe with the help of Prakriti or Pradhana, the 24 categories of Prakriti, the three gunas and all those things, they cause a lot of confusion and lower knowledge. But at the same time, we need the help of Prakriti. And when we turn our attention inwards, Prakriti herself, Shakti herself helps us to detach ourselves from the gross. Then we attach to the subtle. Savichara and Nirvichara comes. Then we detach from that also. When the mind becomes pure Nirvichara, when we cross that Nirvichara, we get a samadhi which is known as Ritambhara Prajna. Tatra Prajna Ritambhara. Ritambhara Tatra Prajna is 48th verse. In that samadhi, knowledge is said to be filled with truth. Ritam Bhara. Ritam means the cosmic truth. Unfortunately, now the truth that we know is partial. We know partial truth, so you can't say it is untruth. It is a lower truth. So Swamiji says we are progressing from lower truth to higher truth. We start with the gross objects, then we realize, oh, this is not the gross object. This is not the Ishta. We are meditating on the Shiva Linga or some other gross object. Then we try to go into the subtle aspect of that gross object on which we were meditating. When the meditation intensifies, then we give up the savichara and also the nirvichara. When the mind becomes very pure, when the samskaras, the bijas are destroyed, and then only the highest truth remains. So what that highest truth is, we'll discuss in the next class. Yeah. If there are questions, you can ask in the chat. Yeah. The question is, thank you. Oh, it is just a remark. It's not a question. That the idea of Maharaja Ashoka, how he took to ahimsa after practicing himsa. Fine. If there is any question, you can just type. Otherwise, I'll take leave. Yeah. Now, can someone improve samskara? Yes. Definitely, it's not a question of improving. It is a question of rooting out or killing the old samskaras or destroying the old samskaras and replacing it with new samskaras. So, but the ultimate goal is to create a samskara which will gobble up all the, it is like Sri Ramakrishna saying, you need a thorn to remove another thorn which is hurting you. But then you don't keep that thorn, you throw away both. So also samskaras, good samskaras are very good, provided they help you in rooting out or negating the influence of the negative samskaras. So we can definitely remove the samskaras, and improving samskara means removing the negative and replacing it with positive samskaras. So that is what it is meant. But improvement, the best improvement takes place when you create a samskara of the divine within you through spiritual practices. The spiritual samskaras, they are the ones which will overrule and establish some kind of control over the lower samskaras, so that even if they are in seed form, they will slowly get burnt. The Ritambara Prajna, which is spoken of here, that will actually create some kind of uh, heat. That is why they call it Dagda Bija. Dagda Bija Avastha will come in the next few verses, it will be there. What do you mean by destruction of samskaras? Means destroy the seeds, because most of the seeds, when they get water and they will start sprouting. So the only way to render them ineffective is to just burn them. So that burning takes place when you do spiritual practices, whether you pray, through prayer, through japa, through reading of scriptures. They are all positive samskaras which burns the old samskaras. So we can't improve, we can just destroy the old, because each samskara has a unique quality. If it is bad, it has to be destroyed, and if it is good, it you do not need not retain it. You can use it to counter or overpower the bad samskaras. So that is possible. Then, do past memories arise for clearance? Yes, obviously. past memories of this life or the previous life. When certain thoughts come to us, certain thoughts which we have never thought of in this life, certain experiences people get of the past life. So not only one life, but several lives. It can come anytime. When they arise for clearance, as you said, they will arise, but the way to clear it is the same, whether the samskaras or the memories are of the past life or the present life. Whichever life they belong to, the only way to counter it is through spiritual practices. The goal of spiritual practice, the purpose of spiritual practices like japa and all, is to erase the memories, clear the memories, or destroy the memories of not only this life but the past lives also. So that is nirbija or nirvichara samadhi, which purifies. Purification means destruction of the seeds. So for or clearing of the attic, as I said, in the house there are attics, we just don't know. Samskaras are like the dirt which we have accumulated in the attic or the room where we don't use it now. So storeroom. So this attic has to be cleared now and then. So the past life, every memories of several lives are stored there. The older they are, the more difficult they are to burn. But when we clear the attic, uh, they will arise. They will definitely arise, provided we have a desire to open the attic. If we keep the attic closed, thinking that they will just be there, they will be there, but one day or the other we have to clear it. So definitely past memories come and they have to be cleared. That happens quickly if we do japa. So Swami Premeshanandji was once asked by Holy Mother. He says, if you want to realize God slowly or realize your oneness with Brahman, you will get it, but maybe you will have to live for 3 more lives. It will not be very difficult, but if you want to get mukti in this, or salvation or moksha in this life itself, then you have to suffer a lot. Why did Mother say that? She said that because the past memories or the past samskaras were so numerous that when you want to clear it very quickly, then you have to work hard. Then there will be a lot of trouble. So he said, okay, I don't mind if I have to suffer, but I want to finish it in this life. So some people, they don't want to clear their attic slowly. They just want to finish it in one go. But that entails a lot of suffering. So a choice is ours, and uh, that is the reason why they say past memories do arise for clearance when we meditate, when we are intense in our efforts to clear it fast, then all these things will arise. Otherwise we will be under a false impression that we are safe. There are no past memories, but they are just lurking behind. We have just closed the attic for the time being, but it is good. If one can't do it, then one can do it slowly. Maybe that the choice is left to the person. That is why Holy Mother asked him, you can take 3 lives and slowly clear the past memories. But the warning she gave was that if you want to do it in this life, then you will have to undergo a lot of suffering, and that he had to. There's so much of sickness he had to undergo. But somehow he was convinced that by Mother's grace, I want mukti in this life itself. I don't have the patience to wait for 3 more lives. Should we practice non-attachment to the gross form of our Ishta and focus on the subtle form? You don't have to practice non-attachment. The attachment on the gross form leads to the subtle form, and we have to go beyond the subtle form also. So it's not a question. Since we are still gross, if we were subtle enough, then we would have directly been able to meditate on the subtle form of our Ishta. But since we can't do it, there is no harm in starting with the gross, but one should not stop with the gross. We have to go to the subtle aspects, the Leela Chintan and all the qualities of Sri Ramakrishna, or the Ishta, and then focus on the subtle, and then, if possible, even go beyond that. That is the essential Sri Krishna, the Ritambara Prajna, the Sri Krishna as he is, the pure consciousness, Satchidananda. So, since we can't focus on that, the next best is to focus on the qualities or to the subtle form of Sri Krishna. If we can't even do that, at least the gross form will take us. So it is a question of how far we are from the goal. So if we are further away, we will meditate and be happy only with the gross form. We will not go beyond, but very often it is, sometimes we get stuck. So we have to always start making progress by trying to find out who is the subtle Sri Ramakrishna. Is he just the photo, the form that we see, or is there something beyond the form? So that is also possible. Yeah. That not only possible, that is essential. So japa and concentrated puja, is it the same? Now it depends on how you do puja. If you do puja as a mere ritual and japa as a mere ritual, then both are useless. But if we do japa and the puja with the same focus, with the goal in mind, goal very clear in our mind, then it is the same. Whether you do puja, external puja, internal puja, prayer, japa, these are different means. It can be done in a gross way, it can be done in a subtle way, and it can be done even in a very superior way, trying to understand the essence of that. Okay, so I'll take your leave now. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.